Hey trainers, we're back for another exciting match at the Toronto Regional Championship. And Kirk, you went around and saw some interesting stuff. But what did you notice when you were walking around in the last round?
A lot of interesting decks. The expected, as we kind of foreshadowed a little bit, Pikachu Zekrom all over the place. We also see some extended staples, like we just saw last round, Archie's Blastoise, and some pretty exciting deviations from the norm that we are excited to bring you here in round three.
And trust me, we can actually talk about these. Not right now, but maybe in about a minute or two. But yeah, when I was walking around, I saw some pretty exciting stuff too. Some strange variations of famous old decks, some new decks even, but it seems like there's a pretty healthy mix. I feel like a lot of people were skeptical about this expanded format and the cards in the expanded format. Like a lot of the chatter that I've heard has been, I don't like expanded for such and such reason, but with the most recent bans and the newest cards, it seems like there's a good balance now.
Yeah, Team Up really unlocked a lot of fun new strategies. Something that's interesting though, because of Team Up and the Tag Team GX is giving up three prize cards when knocked out. Something Jeff and I were speaking to round one was that kind of opens the door for high power single prize attacker decks like Night March. So if you didn't pack your Carrots today, you're finna to see some Night March being announced and taking some big knockouts.
Or if you ain't finna to see that, you're finna to see a heck of a whooping at some point because Night March, I mean, it's amazing how the metagame works, the game within the game for Pokemon, where you get in these situations where one deck is good one day, then it's bad the next day, then it's good again. And a lot of situations like that, it's a little deeper than just rock, paper, scissors, because you have to anticipate what your opponent is going to do and what everybody at your tournament's going to do because you know you're going to see a little bit of everything with hundreds of people. There's no way around it. But what are you more likely to see? So you get ahead of other players, and that's why we see some things like Night March making a rebound. That's why we see some things, even like Trevenant making a rebound.
Mm-hmm. And you also see other things, such as Stefan's deck in round one, kind of a
Yeah.
toolboxy, had the Buzzwole and the Beast Energy, the Nihilego to Nightcap and do some big attacks that way. Another deck that is very toolboxy, real quick, I'm going to confirm that our players do have their headsets on. They
Looks like
do,
it.
and we are going down to the match. Toolbox decks that we want to talk about.
We
Charlie
are so
Lockyer
excited
on the
about this.
left-hand side of your screen. What do you have in front of you, Mr. Kettler?
Oh, my sweet Arceus. We have so many things right here, and let's just go ahead and unpack it a little bit. I mean, with the action going on in the game right now, notwithstanding, we have Zoroark GX, so you know that. We've seen a lot of Zoroark GX. Great card because its tradability lets you discard a card from your hand to draw two cards. Great attack, riotous beating, 20 times the number of Pokemon you have in play. Just all these great effects rolled into one. It's been winning tons of tournaments. It has won tons of tournaments, but going deeper here, there are a lot of opportunities with the cards that he's got. So we've got a basic, tiny little Wimpod Glycopod GX line. We have a Grass Attacker dealing really efficient, solid damage for one energy. But we also have a couple tech cards, and by tech I mean single copy inclusions. We have a single copy of Pyroar from Flash Fire, and its ability, basic Pokemon can't attack it. Basic Pokemon can't do anything against it. And so you guys might remember that a few tournaments ago, a few months ago, Hex Maniac, the all-powerful supporter card that shuts off abilities, was banned. So that intimidating main, that is going to stay safe in almost all situations. So if your opponent has an all-basic deck, they're in trouble. But I understand that we have nothing like that from our friend Frank, right?
Nope, Frank Percic, as you saw, he benched. You have Ditto BCR in the active, Ditto Prism on the bench. We saw Battle Compressor for two executes, propagation executes, going to the bin along with an N, Trainer's Mail real quick, and then an N. He played the N. But what we've actually got going on here is an Alolan Executor Egg Splat. So Alolan Executor from Team Up with the Egg Splat attack, which is 60 times the amount of execute you discard from your hand. And this is all unlocked because in Expanded, you get access to Double Dragon Energy.
That's exactly right. You get access to Double Dragon. You get access to that amazing ability, Propagation. Both decks are doing a great job taking advantage of it, but Frank's deck is all about that. And also, in addition to that, there's a really neat inclusion. I want to see it factor in at some point is this combination between Noivern GX and Lance Prism Star. Lance Prism Star letting you put dragon Pokemon directly into play, not just basic dragon Pokemon, any dragon Pokemon, any two dragon Pokemon. And so that's a way to replenish your Alolan Executors, but the cool, spicy surprise play is putting something like Noivern GX into play to disrupt the attachment of all those special energy that Charlie's got.
We see Charlie using Ultra Ball to grab a Tapu Lele, using Tapu Lele to grab Bridget, and then we see two Zorwas go to the bench. So really setting up the core of his plan, the Zoroark GX tradability to get through that deck. And that is all we're getting here. Is that actually a Pokemon fan club? Reflection's kind of brutal, and I know he only grabbed two.
It's a Bridget.
Okay, so we elected to only grab two cards off of the Bridget because he has Gengar Mimikyu GX. Are we going to see the GX attack? No, we are not.
Interesting plays. So just a little bit of quick damage right there. So nothing too crazy to start us out for that, but it sets you up for a knockout at some later point. And the neat thing about doing that is that by putting the damage on the Ditto, he can't use his ability to switch it out for an Execute, or else he's just going to knock himself out.
Exactly. That transform ability allowing you to put a basic Pokemon on top of it and actually evolve it that turn. Frank actually allows it to get knocked out. Promotes the Ditto Prism. We see the Alolan Executor with
the double dragon, yeah.
With the double dragon. He now has, with doing that, puts the egg in the bin. He now has 3 propagation executes, I believe, in the bin. This is going to be a heavy chunk of damage. Propagate 3 times.
All right.
Charlie just confirming, yes, those are in fact 3 executes with the propagate ability. Frank will bench 1, so he doesn't have that opportunity to allow himself to get benched out if Charlie can muster up the very resilient 160 HP that Alolan Executor has. And he's going to use Egg Splat for 120, perhaps the most fun attack name that he has on his side of the board.
Well, I don't know. I like the Paradise name, too. It seems like there's a lot of options there for fun things. I mean, Paradise Draw, Egg Splat, it's a fun card all around. I mean, and it's good, too, because we've got Frank at 2-0 and a regional championship with it. It's also non-GX, by the way, so high HP, non-GX. It's only giving up 1 prize card per knockout. All in all, it's a pretty good spot for a deck to be in, but I feel like even with all of that said, Charlie has all of the tools from Zoroark to be able to get himself in a nice position here where he has ways to eventually wear down that deck. He runs the single copy of Faba, the supporter card that lets you put one of your opponent's special energy cards in the loss zone. And with a deck like Frank's, where it literally relies off of only 4 special energy, nothing else, at that point, use enough Fabas, you might win the game outright by doing that.
Let's really catch you up on what Charlie did in his turn. He used Acerola to pick up the damaged Pokemon, to put it back to his hand, has the Alolan Grimer in the active, floatstones it, attaches Rainbow Energy to Gengar Mimikyu GX, retreats into it, and uses that Horror House GX attack. Frank is not playing any cards this turn.
No siree, Bob. I mean, at this point, we're in a spot where Charlie's able to apply a little bit of pressure, not getting quite that knockout potential on Frank's side that I'd hope to see, but it's still anybody's game.
We see Charlie going through. Frank making some decisions here. Just going to 120. He does get to propagate those eggs. Excuse me, 130. He does get to propagate the eggs. Excuse me. Come on, rewind, Kirk. Let's get it together. Rainbow Energy attached. That's 10. 120 with the double propagate for the egg splat. And now the action is back on Charlie. His board looking a little bit more stout than Frank's over there with the lone egg on bench.
That's right, and we see another really neat inclusion in Charlie's deck. We've seen it plenty of times before in Zoroark GX, but I just want to bring it up one more time. Alolan Muck, with its ability, being able to shut off with the power of alchemy abilities of Pokemon, abilities of basic Pokemon. So the ability to actually, no pun intended, take advantage of propagation is going to be negated. It's going to be a lot harder for Frank to function with that in play. So his damage output is mitigated. His ability to exploit that in other ways, like being able to Ultra Ball away eggs, is also negated as well.
Charlie does play the one Alolan Grimer and one Ditto Prism. So Frank's approach, maybe perhaps in game two and game three, if we get that far, will be to target those down first to perhaps prevent that Alolan Muck from coming down and completely shutting off his strategy of using the propagation eggs to increase that damage output.
Right, although I feel like even with Alolan Muck in play, there's still a couple options that Frank might be able to go with. He still has those two copies of Rescue Stretcher, being able to shuffle or put Executes back into your hand or into the deck. He has Lance Prism Star, like we talked about, being able to, if I recall correctly, once a knockout happens, that's the point where you're able to put up to 2 Dragon Pokemon into play directly, and that's where that Noivern might be relevant.
Mm-hmm. With those double dragon energies, making those dragon-based energy costs a little bit easier to manage. And Charlie getting another Zoroark GX out to pair up with the one with the ability he's already used for this turn, as denoted by that ability marker. Discounting Skyfield to trade, we see Versus Seeker DCE. Charlie's got the world in his palm. He's got a lot of options here, a lot of mobility, and that's exactly how the deck is built. Be able to see what your opponent's doing, pivot, adjust your strategy, and keep moving forward.
Precisely. And the amazing thing about Zoroark GX decks is, and in this particular situation, I feel like it really exemplifies it, is that even without attacking, you can put so much pressure and stress on your opponent's setup where we have seen nothing but Gengar Mimikyu doing attacks so far, and Gengar Mimikyu being in the active position. We haven't seen a Riotous beating yet so far, but just through all the card draw, the setting up, the power of alchemy, all the whole kit and caboodle, we've got this situation where Charlie's in a commanding position without saying the words Riotous beating once.
Exactly. We know Charlie has a Versus Seeker tucked away in that hand, and we also know that Acerola is in the discard. So if Frank doesn't find a way to knock this Gengar Mimikyu out, that's an easy Acerola target to pivot into an attacker and start putting even more pressure onto Frank's side of the board. Frank, a very anemic turn, not getting much done, and it's back over to Charlie, and the heat is on.
The heat is on, but not with that Pyroar, because it's relevant and actually capable of auto-winning some matchups with that ability. But here, not so much. We've got Evolution Pokemon is the name of the game for Frank's deck. Pyroar only really becomes relevant when a deck is centered around those basic Pokemon like Pikachu and Zekrom, or the Night March attackers like Pumpkaboo and Joltik.
We see that Versus Seeker came down, pulled up Acerola, bringing that Gengar back to the hand, and then immediately trades away that Rainbow Energy to get 2 fresh cards. And now Charlie is in the mode to riotously beat down on these eggs.
That's right, and we've got a situation where all of his little plays here are going to be ways for him to further his setup in case something happens to that Zoroark GX. He's setting himself up for more disruptive capabilities, and even without the absolute broken effects that we've seen from the deck, like there are cards that have been banned that work so well with Zoroark GX, and more get banned, but Zoroark's still a good deck.
Absolutely. Level ball comes down. Frank pulls up another egg, rescue stretchers, an egg to hand. And you know, 2 eggs is just enough to take a knockout on that Muck. Frank really finding a way to jostle his strategy loose and be able to do what he wants to do, which is propagate every single turn.
And I like the inclusion of Lysander in addition to, I think it's just, I actually don't think that I see any copies of Guzma in Frank's list. It's just that Lysander. And the neat difference between that and Guzma is that with Guzma, generally its effect to switch your own Pokemon is actually pretty beneficial, but all that Lysander is just choose one of your opponent's Pokemon to bring up, as you can see on the screen right now. And with only 4 energy and not many ways to retreat, that actually works in Frank's favor to be able to play that card over Guzma, to be able to get himself outs and ways to be able to knock out Pokemon without putting himself in an awkward situation.
Correct. Frank not playing any ways to really pivot his Pokemon around. No float stones, nothing like that. So being able to pull up a Pokemon on your opponent's side to take the knockouts on the ones you want without changing your active is crucial. Charlie has some questions to answer now, knows that Frank is at least going to have one entire turn.
We had a
Oh, got
quick
a
mix-up there.
little miscommunication, I think. Frank, again, going to try and propagate some eggs next turn and get himself set up. Charlie, recognizing that Muck is his line to victory by stifling Frank's game plan, decides to rescue Stretcher back in, the Grimer, the Muck, and a Roadblock Sudowoodo.
Yes, sir. Get those back into the deck. Get the Alolan Muck back into play at some point, and be able to set himself up to shut off all those propagation abilities yet again.
I believe that's a Malo that Charlie just played. Going to
Yes,
put
sir.
2 cards to the top, and I would be shocked if one of them wasn't an Alolan Grimer to go ahead and set up for that following turn Muck.
Yeah, and there it is. Gave us a little flash of the Alolan Grimer there. We're about to see a trade, discarding that Golisopod. Not a bad idea. I don't know how relevant it'll be in this matchup. Really, it just comes down to Zoroark. Looks like a little hesitation there after putting it into play. Oh, and I think one interesting thing we just saw on the board, you can barely make it out with the screen, but those markers say ability used. And with Zoroark and trade, that's actually really relevant, because if you are not keeping track of all of your abilities, you get in this situation where it's a he said, she said saying, oh, hey, I hadn't used trade, or oh, did I use trade? Putting your opponent in an awkward situation. But Judge is like, no, we've got our markers here. Let's just go ahead and throw them on the Pokemon, make it clear. No issues.
Charlie able to take the knockout there with the Riotous Beating. Frank rips off the top of Teammates, which is a very strong supporter that allows you, if your Pokemon was knocked out the previous turn, allow you to search your deck for any 2 cards. Maybe exactly what Frank needs to set up another attack this turn and try and keep his engine going a little bit. Might, depending on his contents of his hand, might set up for maybe like a Versus Seeker so he can Lysander the next turn again and really take out the Muck, which I think Frank knows is impending doom on his egg-based strategy.
It has to go at some point. There's no question about that. And I like the potential here in being able to get a second Alolan Muck knockout at some point, because with those GX knockouts, he's keeping himself in the game, but not really hindering himself either by knocking out 2 copies of Alolan Muck. So he gets the worst ability for him out of the board twice at different points in the game, knocks out a GX Pokemon at some point, and then maybe finishes off one of the smaller GX Pokemon, like that Shaman, that EX Shaman at 110, or the GX Lele at 180, 170.
Frank carefully deciding on which 2 cards he's going to need to find his route to victory this game. I think he has 2 selected. I believe he's announced he's going back in, so he's going to use the 2 cards he just grabbed. I see a Stretcher, Double Dragon Energy.
I think I see the shadow of a Prism card at the top of his hand.
I believe
That
the
might-
Ultra Ball just pitched in the Noivern GX and a Shrine of Punishments.
Yeah, I think so too, and I think he's setting himself up for that Lance Prism star later.
Ultra Ball grabbing another Egg Splat Executor. He's going to Stretcher. Noivern. Ditto. And another tall boy.
Super tall boy saying egg splat. This is not the 90s, folks, so this is not Nickelodeon. This is the Pokemon Company International. These are Alolan eggs, and they are ready to deal some damage.
We know he has the Double Dragon in hand. I see a Prism card in his hand. Is that the Lance Prism in his hand?
I think that it is. I mean, you see the marker, you see the illustration of it. I'm not really sure what else it could be, so I'm pretty confident that's what he's wanting to set up at some point.
So triple propagate, are we going to see it? Yes.
And we literally just heard him say the words triple prop in the background, and I love it.
Absolutely, triple prop. Got to bench another one. Again, you don't want to have some crazy nefarious things happen to your active and get yourself caught benched out. Frank highly considering what he can do here. Does he want to bench another one? Does he want to just chip in on the Zoroark for 60 and maybe set up for the following turn?
Do you think he can set himself up for the 110? I don't think that He's playing around with the idea of discarding something. We've got Paradise Draw. Okay, so that's actually another option for the deck. Makes it a little more consistent, where you can discard cards from your hand to draw more cards. So it looks like he was missing some piece of the combo that really would have helped him out otherwise. And he's like, you know what? Let's just hedge our bets, wait a turn, and then go for the knockout next turn.
Typically, a quick little aside on single prize attacking based decks. The threshold is for your opponent is 3 prizes. Once your opponent with a GX based deck gets past 3 prizes, and if you haven't taken any yet, exclusively 2 in this case, then you're kind of out of the game, because even if you trade accurately, you still are going to lose that game. So the wick on the stick of dynamite in Frank's hands is shortening very quickly, and he's to find himself a way to get a 1 or 2 prize knockout in this following turn at minimum.
I've never heard of a palm tree being compared to a stick of dynamite and the wick of a stick of dynamite, but I like the analogy. We'll go with that.
It's going to work for now.
Yeah. And it seems like, yeah, it's exactly like he said, with a couple early knockouts from Charlie, that's putting a lot of pressure on Frank. But if Frank is able to just go ahead and get that one knockout next turn, I think he's on a decent path to be able to get a win here.
Absolutely. As we know, the Alolan Muck is going to be is on the horizon if Charlie wants it. He's got a stacked hand, and I'd be hard pressed if he couldn't find what he needed with what he's got in there. His grip is about 7 to 10 cards, and I know I saw Pokemon Communication. Of course, he can propagate the egg back in the hand before obviously he gets his Muck live.
Yeah, and with that Skyfield in play, Max Pokemon in play, that Alolan Eggs is looking like it's going to get knocked out this turn. Lots of options, although maybe one little thing that can work in Frank's side, in Frank's favor, is eventually being able to win this stadium war, where we have both players running stadiums. So if Frank is able to be on top of that, he's able to get a Shrine of Punishment stuck in play for the rest of the game, deal damage to Charlie's GX Pokemon, and at the same time avoid that massive damage from Charlie dealing 180 for just a single attack.
Charlie disrupting Frank's turn. If you recall, last turn was the teammate's turn, and then the Paradise Draw. So Charlie playing the end there, maybe disrupting the long con that Frank was working on to get himself back into the game. Battle Compressor going to allow Frank to take an inventory of that deck and get rid of things he don't need. Silent Lab seems pretty loose in the face of a Muck, so that's going to go to the discard, along with a level ball and mystery card number 3 that Frank will reveal to us here in a moment.
I like the decision to deck thin a little bit. You guys might have heard me talking about just the decisions and being able to not just directly draw good cards, but to be able to give yourself the best probability of getting what you need. And by getting rid of that, he's putting himself in a better spot. With the Trainer's Mail, looks like he has a lot of the cards that he would need, but not quite everything.
Charlie looking through the discard. Frank's like, hey, while you're in there, can you sling me my 2 double dragon energy? I want to put them back in the deck with special charge. Working at max efficiency over there, although their opponents working together to make things happen and be conscious of the clock. Transform Ditto coming down.
And we've got an N here, and this is going to be a little more variable. Frank's really hoping to be able to hit just the right combination of cards to keep this going. He probably needs a stadium. He probably needs something to be able to keep this egg alive. And I see some of the cards. Wait,
he got Alolan.
Wait. Let's pause for a second. Did he only draw 5 cards, or did you draw 6?
He drew 5.
Okay, good. Okay.
He drew 5. Shrine of
Just
Punishment was
checking.
good. That's
deal.
a good 5 cards. Alolan Executor is the 5th card. That comes down.
He could have lost the game
he
if he didn't
Lance
hit
Prism.
that
I
eggs.
think Andy does he have double dragon energy?
He
too?
does.
I think he does.
Yep, he does.
He kind of hit. And Paradise Draw again.
Disregard that. I'm wrong. I thought I mixed up Shrine of Punishment from the Glare, but yeah, he's setting himself up.
This is what he's doing. He's setting up Paradise Draw. He has the Lance again. He wants this to get knocked out. He wants us to get knocked out so we can maybe Lance and go to Noivern GX, because we know that found its way back in the deck. He has the double dragon energy, so he's holding on to that. We've got some options here. This might be the slow burn through Shrine of Punishment and Item Locking Charlie.
That's right. And the great thing about Noivern GX is that with its first attack, it's dealing 50 for 2, so you don't necessarily have to wait a turn to be able to attack. You can start disrupting your opponent right away. and you can have a little bit of bulk on top of that. So another thing about these non-GX decks is that even if it technically is mostly non-GX, if your opponent's down to one prize left, then you can put a GX Pokemon into play, no problem.
Charlie smelling what Frank was working on here. Or I guess Charlie was smelling what Frank was cooking. If we want to stick to the rock and what he says, we see Faba on the Shrine. That's in the lost zone. Doesn't take the full knockout on Executor, and Frank still not able to leverage that Lance Prism after another turn of Paradise Draw.
Yeah, you get in these situations where players commit to some sort of action, hoping their opponent will be baited into doing something. And for the most part, I feel like that strategy typically works, but at higher levels of play, it's less likely to work. Where Charlie was like, nope, not taking it. Not taking it today. We'll just go ahead and take this slowly because, in addition to drawing six prizes, you can also win just by slowly whittling down your opponent's resources. And Zork's good at that.
We see the ace spec of choice for Frank in this deck is the Dowsing Machine, allowing him to get a trainer out of the discard. For a deck like this, where you have to recycle your single prize attackers so much, allows him to have effectively rescue stretch or copy number 3. Versus Seeker coming down, teammates grabbing 2 cards going straight to the hand
We
for
had a
Frank.
Oh, and we have an accidental teammates here because Frank was not knocked out. And so both players are trying to figure everything out. The judge is trying to figure this
Yep.
out, piece it together. So accidental teammates, but shouldn't be too hard to correct. We're not sure that. So it looks like there's going to be a little rewinding here, and that's an unfortunate thing. When you get in the heat of a game like this,
Mhm.
sometimes you're going to make mistakes. Luckily, though, everybody caught it before it became too foregone.
Good practice by Frank, having the 2 cards he got off teammates set off to the side, so it was easy. He actually had them in his left hand. I don't believe they touched the hand. Judge is there working it out with them, and getting this game to a state where it can continually move forward without being impeded too much.
And I'm not exactly sure what penalty resulted here because technically it is an advantage gain, but it's a really minimal advantage. I'm not sure if, and that's the problem here is that we can't see on the board if there even was a prize penalty reflected because the board state doesn't change if there is one, but a player just has one less prize they have to take.
Right.
And so that's actually what we're looking to go ahead and check out. Maybe we'll find out what happened, but there's just as likely a possibility it was a warning.
All right, so Frank elects to use his Versus Seeker for N, draws his 5 cards, plays town map, reveals the prizes. We see 2 Exploit Executor in the prizes, which is why perhaps Frank has been having a bit of an issue finding them in
Just a
his deck.
smidgen. Oh, and by the way, we got word on the earlier situation. It was just a warning.
Warning moving forward. Frank on thin ice has to keep the plays tight. And keeping us on our toes here in the booth. Great work by the table judge to catch that before too much damage was done and keep this game moving forward.
Yeah, but meanwhile, Charlie's like, speaking of damage dealing, I want to deal some damage at some point, but I totally don't mind just setting my board up. That's why he decided not to take the knockout. And Frank's just waving his hand. You can already tell by his body language, like, yeah, let's just go ahead and go on to the next one.
Yeah.
And probably a good call. Ties, to be honest, are not really advantageous in a format like this at all. But at the same time, it's better than nothing. And that's more likely than not what he's hoping to play for at this point.
Playing Acerola for the 3rd time and clearing damage, well, 1, allowing him to recycle the first Gengar Mimikyu that was the active to soak up damage, and then removing that heavily damaged Zoroark. Kind of like I said, the proverbial nail in the coffin. Frank can no longer prize trade to catch back up. That's exactly what I was talking about. Charlie steps up, goes down to 2 prizes. Prize trade is no longer in Frank's favor, even if he is trading single prize attackers for GX 2 prizes or Gengar Mimikyu maybe even 3 prizes. So interesting to see how Frank's going to pivot this game. I think it's going to come down to keeping Alolan Muck off the board and that power of alchemy ability.
And let's just simplify it even further. It really comes down to going first, too. So he's going to go first, probably. He's going to ideally get the knockoff on that Alolan Grimer or the Ditto or whatever becomes an Alolan Muck. Charlie's got a lot of options on what he can do and can't do to be able to get to that point. So he gets that off. He ideally, from his point of view, does not get some sort of weird hijinks like a knockout or a setup for a knockout, and then just streams from there.
Yeah, Frank definitely wants to be in the driver's seat on these games. Always wants to be going first. His deck's sort of built that way, especially when you're attacking with stage ones. Um, I really want to see him on his second turn of the game take a knockout.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I'm like any knockout whatsoever, whether it's a GX knockout to just get some prizes, whether it's an Alolan Muck to set Charlie back a little bit, either of those would be okay. But the whole concept, like we've been talking about, we've been hammering this point over and over and over again, is the fact that Charlie wants to win the attrition battle. He wants to take advantage of his big damage and be able to get ahead just off of that alone. But
Absolutely.
Zoroark controls too good.
Our players have shuffled up, and we are back to the action. In quick form, we see Ditto Prism as the start. As Frank's starter, a transformed Ditto on bench like last time. And recall, game one, Frank did go first. Just couldn't piece it together fast enough to get out in front of the Alolan Mug.
That's exactly right, but we see him coming off to a pretty decent opening with fresh new hand, a couple Dittos in play, and the advantage of having Ditto Prism Star in the lead as opposed to Boundaries Cross Ditto is that Ditto, its almighty evolution ability, it just lets you play the Pokemon. You don't even need a new basic Pokemon to replace it, so no additional cards necessary, just put the stage 1 on top of it, and you're good.
You know, let's jump back to game one real quick. What really allowed Charlie to get out ahead of Frank was that Sky Return on the Transform Ditto, the Transform Ditto BCR, because then that takes off being able to put an execute on it and further your game plan. Frank actually had to evolve it or use the ability itself to intentionally get a knockout to move his Pokemon around.
And like last game, I like the pressure being applied with the early GX attack, basically telling Frank, nope, you're not allowed to play anything this next turn. I'm just going to go ahead and move on my merry way and start getting set up. Basically, Charlie's getting to go first without actually going first.
Exactly. Charlie leveraging Horror House GX so well. Look at his board here. He's got the Grimer down and the Ditto down. Is that the Galissapod going down? Computer search DCE off the trade. I don't know. I don't know who Charlie prays to at night, but we need to find out because this kid's on fire right now. He is on absolute fire. Ultra Ball going to pitch. Is that a Tapu Lele and something else tucked behind it? Here's the Muck, turn 2. And Frank can't evolve either of his Pokemon right now. Both Ditto's abilities shut off. Power of Alchemy flexing its muscles in a mean way. And Charlie, did he attach another?
Oh, my. That looked like about 400, 500 damage right there. Okay, for you guys who don't know what's going on, Charlie just used Poltergeist for 50 times the number of trainer cards in his opponent's hand. That's items, trainers, supporters, stadiums, whatever. You saw the same thing Jeff talking about a couple games ago. Big damage, no problem. And now Frank is just like, well,
look at this. Oh, man. Horror House GX into Poltergeist. That is like, that's Ghostbusters level just poltergeisting. That's insane. That's insane.
I'm afraid of that ghost. I really am.
To quote the Ghostbusters theme song, "Bustin' makes me feel good," and Poltergeist is going in right now. GMGX flexing its muscles on camera for the second time today here in Toronto.
And that's the amazing thing when you really break it down is that Charlie only runs 3 total copy of Rainbow Energy in his list. So for it to play out exactly like that is just insane. Even with trade, even with searching effects, all that considered, that's still very surprising. And we see a little bit of shuffling around of the Lost Zone. A couple fine details to mention about it. Well, first off, you don't forget to put your Pokemon in the Lost Zone. It doesn't go in the discard pile. It's removed from play. That's how you balance out these broken amazing effects. The second thing is it goes right above the discard, right above the prizes, so there's no confusion, no issue as to whether it is in the discard, whether it's in the deck, and you have clean play.
I couldn't even count that fast. I think that was 6.
A bunch. Most judges probably wouldn't like me saying a bunch, but yeah, I'll go ahead and say if we all have just a fair house rules agreement that a bunch means 500 or more, 400 or more, something within knockout range without having to guess too much. Yeah, we can say a bunch.
The only thing keeping Frank alive in this was that top deck level ball. I believe he grabbed Transform Ditto
And we've
BCR.
got a field blower. A field blower. Okay.
Ooh.
I don't really think that's going to suck up any ghosts. I mean, maybe it'll like blow some leaves.
It's
Can,
not going
can
to
you repurpose a field blower
into a
into
proton pack. I don't think so. Not today. Not today.
maybe they can add that mechanic. Well, not
I,
today anyways.
at this point, I think Frank could invent a Pokemon TCG card, and it wouldn't get him back in this game. This is looking a little bleak, Chief.
Well, my fellow chief, I got to admit, you could maybe invent one card that just says you win the game. That's about the only thing you really could do at this point. And that's the insane thing about Zoroark decks is that you keep on taking away resources from them. You take away disruption cards, you take away ability lock cards. You keep on whittling away. Oh, and you whittle away your recovery from by banning Puzzle of Time. All the cards that center around Zoroark GX constantly getting banned because they are toxic and poisonous to the expanded format, but Zoroark is still here, standing strong and messing with your opponent's setups.
Frankie got to tighten up. He already Sycamored this turn. Just played versus Seeker to try and play. And playing teammates. I thought he. Oh no, he Sycamore last turn and didn't play any cards. Is what happened. It's just Charlie's turn was so quick, just announcing a knockout, that we went right back into Frank's wheelhouse, and so fast I almost missed it. Change that. I did miss it. Frank looking at his hand, wondering what he can do here. What two cards is going to help Frank not immediately lose this game?
And I think I see that field blower again, a new field blower. So you think two field blower can make a proton pack?
Oh, man. If only it had that puzzle time ability where if you use two at once, it does something incredibly powerful.
Then you mentioned Puzzle of Time, and Zoroark GX is like, oh, so I
get
hear
those.
rumors it's back.
Yeah, I get those too. All right, let's see if we can see what Frank took. Just a. Oh, that was the most dejected go-ahead we just heard here. The match is going on behind us, and Frank letting out a roar of dejection because things are not breaking his way.
And that's the fun thing that's just really tough to communicate with the Pokemon trading card game, even on stream, is that you have all the different players in the community here. You have all sorts of different attitudes, play styles, combating, clashing, meeting up, and yeah, you get to see a little bit of character sometimes, and Frank's getting a chance to show that off, even if he is in a dejected state. Is that that the word he used about 5 minutes ago?
Yeah, I believe so. DC coming down on Zoroark because why not? Are we going to announce Poltergeist yet again?
DC dejected.
Poltergeist, let's see. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
We still got big damage.
Bang, knockout, 300 damage on an egg.
Oh.
Ugh.
And this is something that might be able to help him out here because he can get those dragon Pokemon into play from his deck. And I don't know, you think I'm not really that optimistic even with 2 dragon Pokemon in play, because here Charlie can just start using Faba.
He can start using Faba. Poltergeist is still dealing very real damage here. Lance Prism going to the Lost Zone, putting a Noivern GX and an Egg Splat Alolan Executor from Team Up on the bench. I believe that DDE, Double Dragon Energy, went down on the Noivern GX, so maybe eyeing up some item lock for Charlie's next turn.
I think you might be right, although, again, we're in this really awkward situation where Ditto is just sitting there. There's really no way to get Ditto out of the active, and so Frank is just hoping that something lines up in the right way for him, number one, not to lose that double, but also to be able to actually get it into play and attack. But the thing about Zoroark GX is it's drawing a bunch of cards every turn. He can draw 5 without much trouble. I mean, he's got 2 trades in play. He gets his own card. So as long as he just does not hit insanely bad luck, he's probably going to find a way to get around this.
Looking through his hand, taking a quick composition. Would love to be able to chase that Noivern GX before it can really stunt his hand with that item lock. definitely will take the knockout on the transformed Ditto BCR if necessary, but I think Charlie's eyes are glinting for gold in a different fashion, and that's the Dragon Pokemon on the bench.
And now we're hitting one of those situations where, from Charlie's point of view, he's suffering from almost too many options.
Has the Guzma, eyes down the Egg Splat Executor, Zoroark going to come up. With that Skyfield in play, that is a big Riotous beating knockout. Noivern GX coming up. Items are locked down. Do you think maybe worth using a Versus Seeker in hand before the Noivern GX comes up to make sure he's got a supporter for the following turn?
Yeah, I can definitely see an argument for that. It's challenging though because if you play that VS Seeker, you have to commit to it. You've already committed a turn in advance, which results in a weird situation where Frank can modify his play depending on that decision. So if he gets a Gust card, if he gets a card like Guzma to get something, then maybe Frank can choose a different attack. But overall I like it, and I feel like I like it more depending on the number of VS Seeker that Charlie has left.
We're on Frank's turn here. He's thumbing through that discard. Charlie thumbing through his hand, which is about the same size. Plenty of options available on Charlie's side of the board. Frank trying to piece together a way back into this one. Dowsing Machine, Rescue Stretcher, and I think that's an Ultra Ball going to the discard. Battle Compressor. We are going to compress an N.
And okay, I like what Frank's trying here. He's probably about one turn too late with the setup, but I at least appreciate the strategy because right now, Charlie having that Power of Alchemy in play for Alolan Muck can be a bit of a liability because he can't propagate either. Now, granted, it's better that Frank can't propagate, but at the same time, Charlie's going to go down to 2 cards because of this end, both players drawing cards up to the number of prizes that they have left. And so, in order to get out of this, if he needs to, Charlie's going to need to discard maybe some valuable cards.
Frank, after that end, not having a couple choice bands and a Alolan Executor, and Frank is locking out the items for Charlie's next turn, but Charlie's only down to 2 prizes. He's got some DCs on the board, So there's definitely trading a DCE.
That's brutal.
That's when Charlie is in the driver's seat. He is trading away energy. He's trading away Zoroark GXs. He is seeing the finish line, and he is sprinting for it ASAP.
And a little reapplication of that ability used marker. I'm loving it, and everybody's keeping track of everything. Oh, and with
An
the
Acerola.
Jinx.
Jinx Omiakoke Poltergeist for how much? It looks like there's 3 in there. So it's going to be Poltergeist for 150?
Yep.
Nope,
Or
just
two.
two.
Just two, yeah, so 100.
Putting choice bands. So he drew 3 choice bands off that end, putting them both on the Noivern and the Ditto. Poltergeist, not as much damage. Trainer's Mail, not going to find, I think, what Frank is looking for here.
Oh, and one really interesting option that Frank could take is that with Noivern GX, he could potentially lock out Charlie from being able to play any more special energy cards, right? So announce that attack, deal some damage, dump all of the trainers you can from your hand so that you aren't getting knocked out by Poltergeist, and deprive Charlie of being able to attach double colorless energy.
I do believe Gengar Mimikyu GX has a retreat of 2. So maybe just a hard retreat DCE attachment on Zoroark GX seals this one up.
Well, if I'm not mistaken, he just blocked the attachment of double colorless energy.
Because he attached it exactly. So that's a throwback to Giratina's Chaos Wheel, right?
Precisely, yeah.
Interesting. Okay, so Frank's finding a way. And we know he limited his hand down to no trainers, so Poltergeist isn't going to do much.
A little bit more confusion.
Yeah, so
Clock's
it
running
seemed
down.
like Charlie traded twice before putting down the other copy of Zoroark GX. Frank, good guy Frank Percic says, I'm with you, you're good. Just put it down now. Let's all agree that you traded twice. We've got the prayer hands emoji going on Frank's side of the board.
Or do we have it going on? Can't quite tell one way or the other. But
Faba,
there's the Faba. We were
savage.
just talking about that. And
He put it in the discard. It's supposed to be in the lost zone,
yeah,
but
that's
I
right.
think it matters 0%.
Yeah. And we've got one
One.
in Frank's hand. So if Charlie can reuse that
Oh,
Faba, he has another one in his hand and top decked one, right?
he just top deck double dragon energy.
That is, in layman's terms, hot.
Litton coming up, joining the fray.
And Faba's still
Charlie,
eyeing the Lawson again.
that's the swinginess of those tag team GX Pokemon.
Yep, there we
hadn't
go.
taken a
Got that
prize.
correction.
Frank hadn't taken a prize, but now down to just 3 prizes remaining. And Charlie can't attach a DCE.
That's right. Charlie cannot attach a DCE, but as long as he has enough VS Seekers saved up, he's still going to win this because he can knock off more doubles into the Lost Zone. And so we have 2 there already. So my due diligence, I'm not sure if I've been able to keep track exactly of how many doubles that Frank has left or if he has any prized, but he needs to hit the next one. And if he doesn't, then he flat out loses.
Yep, and we already know Charlie. He used that Versus Seeker because he knows his items are going to be locked next turn, and his path to victory is really limiting those Double Dragon energies. So he Versus Seeker for that Faba right back in a hand. Pokemon Communication. Sending a Shaman into the grip. Rescue Stretcher, going to find something good. Couple Zoroark GXs in there. Tapu Lele. And now Muck is active.
Well, I think there's also something additional going on here where the clock, if you guys have noticed, is whittling down a decent amount. So he didn't take a long time, but I didn't exactly really feel like that was a very impactful rescue stretcher. I feel like it needed to happen. I feel like it needed to happen at some point, especially with the risk of shutting off items. But at any rate, if this goes to time and both of these players don't finish up the match with an additional 3 turns added on, then Charlie would win by default because he's up 1 game.
Pyroar's intimidating main not going to do much against Noivern because Noivern is not a basic. However, it does bolster up that HP a little bit.
Oh,
It's
that's
not
right. There's that
double
double.
dragon comes right off the top, right in time, and an N will send Charlie's Faba back into the
man.
deck. And now you
I
think
love
about that
it.
rescue
I
stretcher.
love
He
it.
just added 3 more Pokemon, which reduces the odds of him hitting that Faba.
Yeah.
And if Frank can just, if Charlie rolls off some dead Sudowoodo and Rainbow Energy for Charlie, so Frank takes the knockout. two prizes left.
Oh, man.
Holy smokes, we are down to it. Sudowoodo off the trade. Ultra Ball
Okay,
Shaman.
so a Shaman gives him some options there.
The Muck is active though.
That's right. Yeah, with the Muck being in play with Power of Alchemy shutting off abilities, it's coming to.
Ooh, Tapu Lele shut off
And
too.
none of that's playable. Oh no. So none of that's. We don't have any outs to Faba. We don't have abilities that we can use because of Power of Alchemy. Did Charlie have to put it into play? Absolutely. But is it hurting him really badly right now? Yeah, because the heart of being able to hit some of these cards that you really need in the late game for Zoroark can actually come down to basic abilities. And Charlie's just like, oh, okay, well, I can't do anything, so I'll just go ahead and discard this Shaman I can't use because of my own Power of Alchemy. I'm interested to see what he's even getting here. Well, I'm probably just a little bit of deck thin.
Yep, just getting those dead cards just in case to protect himself. Okay, so here's the kick. I just had to look up to confirm. Sonic Volume? Sonic Volume does 120. His choice band on. If he has Lysander, he can pull up the Tapu Lele with the 2 ticks of Shrine damage and win this game.
Oh man!
Please,
I
come
love
on.
it.
Come on, with Muck active the whole time, Lance Prism coming through, getting that Noivern GX on the bench. This is ridiculous. This is ridiculous. Does he have any Versus Seekers left?
Both players have been whittling down the Versus Seekers, and
he's taking a look.
I think I see it.
He has a Versus Seeker in hand.
I see it.
But
But he's not sure if he wants to play it now.
But the Lysander might still be tucked away in the deck.
Okay,
Sonic volume for 150.
th-
But now knocking off the double dragon energy doesn't do anything because he can still knock him out.
yeah.
With the other. So
We got Kirk squealing. I mean, you can definitely hear it. You can't quite
he
seal
got
it.
he got the fob in the DCE, but he needs to get the Zorak out of the active, and he can't do both in one turn.
No.
Frank might steal this game. Frank might steal this game.
You know, I'll be honest with you guys. Normally, I do not like to see tie situations, but for this, with how good the game's been, I'll make an exception. Like, this has actually been a really exciting tie situation, possible tie situation. We got to hedge our bets here again because who knows what's going to happen.
Okay, second trade. What did he find?
We got a VS Seeker.
Versus Seeker.
Yeah, so we've got additional Faba outs, which is good
So that's
for
Acerola.
Charlie. Or Acerola, yeah.
So that's Acerola to pick it up. But what do you put up front? Like, you don't get anywhere with that. Like, if you Acerola, you don't get anywhere, you know?
And we have this little delay here, the little searching of the discard pile with less than 2 minutes left. Keeping a close eye on that. If we see about 15 seconds, 16 of nothing, we see a lot of
Versus Seeker.
I'm just a little concerned about the pace of play here.
Oh, come on, Charlie.
Okay, I'm a little more concerned about it now
We've
with it
been
being
we've been on this
over
Versus Seeker
45
for 40 seconds.
over 40 seconds at this point. Okay. Yeah. what, are you feeling what I'm feeling, Kurt?
Yeah, I'm feeling it.
Yeah.
I'm feeling it big time.
I'm feeling a minute long Acerola here. As they say, we are not amused. But interesting that he goes for the Guzma right there as his own stall method. Oh, and Frank gets a turn off. Although
Now, Frank's checking the discards here. Guzma play, pretty interesting. Charlie, at this point, has to know that there are no ways to retreat this Ditto, and with the muck in the active, he can't evolve it.
Yeah, and at this point, I'm not seeing the urgency I'd like to see from Frank's side of the board with the time dwindling down the way that it is. Don't see any watches on his wrist or anything like that. Might not know exactly that it's about to be called pretty soon, but at the same time, I
just don't think he has an out, to be quite honest. I'm looking at this
with
list
only
here.
one energy. Do you think that he's just out of ways to switch out that Ditto?
He never played any, which is why we mentioned the Lysander first. So
exactly.
He never actually played.
And there's our time, and
we
we've
just
got
heard the
turn
timer
0
going, so
for
Frank is turn 0. When we were talking about the Lysander, as opposed to Guzma, this is a concern here. When he plays 4 trainers males, teammates, things like that, maybe one float stone or an escape rope would have been a consideration.
Yeah, and let me pause for a second just to interject and explain a little bit. For anybody who has no idea what's going on right now, we've got these tournaments on a time limit. So you have a limited amount of time to finish them, so you have to call time at some point. And here we give players a little bit of grace. We give them 3 additional turns. The player who's active finishes their turn when time gets called. Then the opposing player gets 1 turn. Then the player time was called on gets his own turn. That's turn 2. And then finally, to end the match, the other player gets a turn. That's what we call turn 3. So Frank just finished up turn 0. Charlie's going into turn 1. And
does Charlie no longer have a deck?
But he has a chorus. The question is, does he have enough cards to make that chorus a deck?
Oh my goodness. Does he have 4 cards?
That would.
And he has to draw 4.
Oh,
oh my gosh.
That was intense.
What?
That was some masterful playing right there. That was something else, wasn't it?
When that Gengar Mimikyu GX was just poltergeisting and poltergeisting, and Charlie made that play to trade away a DCE, pick up that Zoroark, so he had no more attackers on board, and that's when the Noivern GX came in sonic volume and really turn the tides of the game.
Honestly, I'm amazed that the Noivern lasted as long as it did. The fact that it was able to, even with all those Fabas, to be able to just hang in there, hang tight, take hits, not die. Excuse me, not knocked out. That's the right phraseology we use here in Pokemon, but at the same time, it held on. It disrupted at just the right points, doing just what it needed to.
You got
Great inclusion.
you have to tip your cap. Frank was peeling those double dragon energies right off the top, just all right, put it on
Yeah.
after every Faba, so that helped a lot. And really just a kind of a critical misstep with when Charlie ace rolling up the DCE and not having any other energy on board. Um, and Frank noticing that, saying, okay, we got to pivot off the items to Sonic Volume.
Got it.
And now we
Yeah.
ended in a tie, round 3 in the bank.
That's right. Unfortunately, no winner interview because, well, no winner. It looks like we might be having an interview. Is that right?
We're going to
Yep.
find out who we're going to get here at the end of round 3, tie between Charlie Lockyer and Frank Percic. We'll be back in a second.
Hey, everybody. John Kettler back with one of our two players tying in round 3. Frank, how are you feeling right now?
Honestly, I am actually pretty relieved that I could squeak out a tie in that matchup. The Alone Muck, obviously, if you were watching the stream, is very, very difficult for my deck. So we put the one Noivern GX in the deck,
Good
and
call.
was hoping that if they turned off our main strategy with the Executor, we could just kind of use that the special energy lock and just skirt our way into some wins.
Awesome. So,
Um,
so tell me something. What made you decide to play Alolan Executor for today?
I saw the card when the card was first announced in Japan. Actually, we got some translations over in the United States, and I thought the card was amazing. I thought it was just super cool. I love the synergy with the Propagation Execute and the Double Dragon Energy, which are two cards that are really only available in this expanded format. And so, being able to utilize the new team up card with like some cards that really can only be played in this type of format, I just thought would be really fun. First of all, which it is, and I thought it'd be really unique. And the fact that with Ditto Prism and Lance Prism Star and things like that in the deck, you can hit up to 270 HP with these new 3 prize tag team GXs come out like Snorlax and Venusaur and these things that have 270 HP. Just being able to hit that with a 160 hit point 1 prize attacker, I just thought was really good.
Awesome. Yeah. So, one point in your last game that I'm a little more curious about is what were you thinking? Like, what was your state of mind when you were just like living on the prayer with your Noivern GX?
Yeah, and that was my only out. You have the I started the Ditto Prison, which was great, and I didn't think about that Poltergeist he gave me, or the Horror House. So I was ready to get everything down, and I was gonna start, item locking
And then it's
and,
like,
and
oops,
special
you
energy
can't play
locking,
cards.
and I was like, oh yeah, well, plan 2, Lance, and luckily I was able to just, teammates for the Lance, and then get the Lance out and get the energy attached, and everything kind of went my way, which was really nice. I was able to get the win in the end in game 2. My only regret probably is that just after I kind of realized that my opponent Charlie had the muck in his deck, and with the Grimer especially, I probably just should have game one conceded a little earlier or went with the Noivern
Oh yeah.
strategy like earlier on, just because really, I mean, that's the only out we have to these kind of decks. I played another deck with a lone muck in it in round one, and it was just so tough to see that there. But it's same thing, you just shut off the special energy, and that's pretty much all you can do.
And you hung in there. You're 2-0-1, technically
Yeah,
undefeated
ooh,
still.
yeah. No, I feel really good about the tie. Honestly, that's a pretty bad matchup for me. So just being able to like squeak out a tie and keep my record like a little higher than normal is pretty nice.
Glad to hear. Well, we're actually going to be interviewing Charlie in a little bit too, but do you have any shout outs before I let you go?
Yeah, I want to give a shout out to Dead Draw Gaming. Obviously, they sponsored me. They're great guys. They actually hooked me up with that Noivern GX card yesterday, so thanks to them. I want to shout out my fraternity back home, everybody at FISA, and my girlfriend Caitlin, and my buddy Jerf, who helped me prepare for this tournament. So shouts out, guys. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Well, hey, good luck, Frank.
Yeah, have a good one.
Yeah. Hello, everybody. John Kettler here with our other tie player in round three, Charlie Lockyer. How are we feeling right now?
Honestly, I'm not feeling too good. I thought I had that game locked up. I drew really well in the beginning. Like, it's really unlikely for me to pull off that Floatstone immediate Horror House GX turn and then a turn 2 muck. I thought I had the game locked up from there.
Yeah.
But there were a couple crucial misses late in the game. Like, I needed an end to make his 2-card hand bigger so I could hit a big poltergeist on him, but I missed that. Then I missed a couple other things that I needed to find that VS Seeker before I had 3 cards in deck so that I could play the Acerola or Guzma or whatever.
Just do something.
And just stay alive at that point because all I needed to do was have more time to play more Fabas. I just needed to play one more or draw it earlier so that he would run out of energies and I could play my DCEs down to take the knockout. But otherwise, it's pretty disappointing to lose there, but it works, or tie.
Better than a round one tie.
Yeah, it's better than that for sure. Yeah.
Well, looking down your list, I see a lot of great inclusions here. It feels a lot like normal Zoroark in a lot of ways, but it feels different. Maybe you can work through with me the process used to pick some of the cards that you used for the list. Did you have pretty much set in stone the idea you'd be using Zoroark, or did it just kind of come to you after a while?
Oh no, I like just playing Zork. This is my first tournament in 3 months and first regional since Roanoke, so I wanted to play something that I knew pretty well, and Zork was like something that I've had success with in the past, and I know it's good because I can keep drawing cards and like use skill to my advantage in places I don't have to rely on luck the entire time. And then I was like, I don't feel confident in any Pika Rom matchups or anything like that. And I realized Pyro was really good just to play a 1/1 inclusion. And for Archies, I went with the Gallisopods, which worked well, judging by how Dean finished in Dallas. And then the Mimigar, or the Gengar Mimikyu tag team came in play. At the very end, because I loved that card, I was testing for this event like 3 months ago before the bans, and I had some ridiculous Gengar Mimikyu deck. And I was like, I just need to play this card in my deck. It's so good. And it turned out to be really working well so far.
Awesome. So every little piece, every single copy card's been making a big difference all around.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. So are there any decks that you're a little concerned about with what you have right now? Because it seems like you have at least some sort of tool for everything. I don't really. It's like most Zoroark where you really don't have an auto loss.
Yeah. Zoro Garb is unfavorable for me. I haven't seen many in the room, luckily. But almost everything else I have a decent shot against. No real issues. I mean, Night March is seeing a lot of play. That loses to Pyroar. All the other the Lucario deck can't really deal with a Gengar Mimikyu if I get it fast enough. So if I draw well, I'm confident I have tools to beat almost everything.
Do you feel like the Gengar Mimikyu's been the MVP so far?
In
Something
general,
else?
in this game, it has been. Last round, I played against Night March, so Pyroar won me the game. And then round 1, Golisopod was really solid to beat an Archestoise. But if I end up hitting more fightings, Gengar Mimikyu hopefully will put in a lot of work.
Great. Well, I tell you what, we're about to let y'all go, but do you have any shout-outs? Anyone you want to say hi to?
Oh, yeah, big shout out to Top Cook Comics. They're my sponsor. You can go to their store online, topcookcomics.com, and use promo code TCCTEAM10. You can get 10% off your full order. They have great prices already lower than most of the big stores, so go check them out.